Namaste. Hello yogis. Welcome everyone. So this is a 4-part session to the journey to Hanumanasana, which is monkey pose, or more commonly known as splits. So I'm not promising that you'll actually be able to get to splits if you just sequentially do these 4 sessions, if you've never done splits before, but with consistent practice I'm confident you will get there, and this is going to warm up all the relevant body parts, joints, muscles to get you there. Great, so the first session today we're focusing on lengthening the back of the legs, the hamstring muscles. So we'll get moving. So you come over to your hands and knees, making sure the shoulders are over the wrists. And we're just going to move with the breath, warming up the spine. So we start to inhale, look forward, arch the spine. Exhale, push the hands into the floor, round the spine. And again, inhaling, arching, exhaling and rounding. Keep moving, coordinating with the breath. So inhaling, arching, exhale and round. Inhale, arching, exhaling and rounding. And bring your spine back to neutral. And just a gentle stretch for the back of the legs. So start to extend your right leg back, just bring the toes down. And then start to release the right heel back as if you were aiming it towards the floor. So it's a nice stretch for the Achilles tendons, the calf muscles as well. Keep the core muscles engaged, try to pull the front of the body in. Good, and then release the right knee back down and change sides. Extend the left leg back, bring the toes down, and then just slowly start to release that left heel a little bit closer towards the floor, feeling a nice stretch in the Achilles tendon and the calf muscles, and a little bit in the hamstrings. Good, and then release the knee, keep the toes tucked under, and we're going to push back into downward facing dog. So lift up, probably step the feet back a little bit. And as this is the first one, you can pedal the feet out. Think about lengthening the spine, lifting the hips up towards the ceiling. Spread the fingers evenly. And try to pull the front of the body in towards the spine. So you're not sticking the chest out, which is the temptation to do in this pose. Good. And then look forward, bend the legs as much as you need to, and start to tiptoe the feet towards the hands, and then release the feet at the top of the mat, hip distance. And take your block or your alternative prop. It could be a thick book, anything that works really. So take it, either the medium or the tall way, rest the hands on the block and really pull the kneecaps up to engage the front of the legs. This will help fire up the back of the legs. Lengthen the spine, inner thighs lift up to the ceiling, pull the lower abdominals in, keep lengthening. So the mistake a lot of people make when they're trying to come into a forward bend is they think it's all coming from the legs. And obviously it is coming from the legs a lot, but it is also the core, it's also the spine, it's keeping that length with the spine. So rather than just thinking about rounding and coming straight down, you think about lengthening forward first to get that length in the spine. Then you can keep the legs bent if you need to, but keep that length in the spine. So if you want to keep a slight bend in the legs, keep lengthening forward, and then you come over. So you've got a nice length in the spine, and then maybe you can start to straighten the legs. into that forward fold. Good. And then slowly uncurl, one vertebra at a time, coming up to standing. Good. So just maybe move your block over to the side. Have your belt ready as well. And we'll get moving into the flow. Just quickly put my hair up. Good, so standing with your feet together, hands at your heart centre, into Tadasana, mountain pose. And then I like to reach the arms forward, really reach forward and then lift up. Lengthen out of the spine, lift up. And then start to hinge forward from the hips. Lengthening, getting that length in the spine and then releasing into the forward bend. Good. And then bring your hands down, so bend your legs as much as you need to. If you need to bend the legs to get the hands flat. And then step back to a plank pose, top of a push-up, shoulders over the wrists, heels back, lengthen the spine, engaging the core. Good, and then start to bring the left hand more into the centre, turn to the outer edge of the left foot. And we're coming to a modified side plank, so step your right foot about halfway, but really lift that bottom hip, open the chest, raise that right arm, and then maybe bring it along by the ear to get a nice side body opening, lifting that bottom hip. Good, and then release. Come back to plank, look forward, and then try to lift the hips, coming back into downward facing dog. And then release the heels down if you can. Otherwise keep the legs slightly bent, but always think about that length in the spine. Good, and then look forward and step your right foot forward into a low lunge, staying on the fingertips, lengthening the spine, back leg active. And then we're going to move dynamically. We're going to straighten that right leg, but lift the toes up so you're on the heel. Maybe you start to lengthen the spine over the leg, otherwise just stay halfway. And then we release back down into the lunge. So 3 more times like that, straightening the leg, coming onto the heel, lengthen the spine, keep that right hip crease moving back. Exhale back into the lunge. And again, inhaling, straightening the leg, coming onto the heel, lengthening the spine. Exhale, release into the lunge. Last time. Start to straighten the leg, come onto the heel, lengthen the spine. Good, and last time, release back into the lunge. Bring your hands flat and step back to a plank pose again. So heels back, a little bit of core work here, shoulders over the wrists, look forward, engaging your core. And this time we start to turn to your left, so bring your right hand more into the centre, turn to the outer edge of the right foot. You can step the left foot halfway, lift the left arm, and maybe it comes along by the ear, but lifting that bottom hip, that right hip, as high as you can. Lengthen the side of the body. Good, and then release into your plank again, high plank, and then we lift the hips, really lift as high as you can, keep the heels lifted, and then at the last moment, maybe release the heels to the floor. You keep that nice lift in the hips, the length in the spine, and we look forward, step the left foot forward into that low lunge. Staying on the fingertips, lengthening the spine, back leg strong. And then we start to move dynamically, We inhale, straighten the left leg, come onto the heel. Move that left hip crease back. Notice if this side feels tighter than the other, or maybe it feels more open. Most people usually have a tighter side. Exhale back into the lunge. And again, inhale, straighten. Exhale into the lunge. Each time, see if you feel like the hamstrings feel like they're opening and lengthening a little bit more, just a fraction. Exhale into the lunge. Last time, straightening. Inhale, coming onto the heel, lengthening the spine, or just stay with the body up halfway. Exhale back into the lunge. Good, hands flat. Step back to plank. Lift the hips up into downward facing dog, Ardha Mukha Svanasana. Take a breath. And then look forward, start to tiptoe the feet forward. Into forward bend, inhale halfway. Lengthen the spine. Exhale, keeping that length, fold forward. Inhale, floating the body up. Reach the arms up. Exhale, hands to the heart center. Good. Okay, so just make sure your block is handy. You might want it for triangle pose in the next sequence. So again, standing with your hands at your heart center. Reach the arms forward, lifting up. Look up at the hands, lengthening. Exhale, hinging forward from the hips. Lengthening the spine, releasing into forward bend, Uttanasana. Inhale onto the fingertips, half forward bend. Always remembering you can keep a slight bend in the legs if you need to. Exhale, releasing down again. Bringing the hands flat, stepping back to plank. And then lift the hips up and back into downward facing dog. Ardha Mukha Svanasana. Take a deep breath, lift the inner thighs up to the ceiling, try to release the heels to the floor. That will really help you get the opening in the back of the legs. Pulling the front of the body in. Good, and then look forward. We step the right foot forward. Now I'm going to be facing away from you, but it might be easier for you to see the alignment. So we drop the back foot, heel to arch alignment, and we start to lift up, circle that left arm up and over. We're coming into Warrior 2, Virabhadrasana 2. We hold there for a breath, and then we're going to move dynamically. On the inhale, we straighten the right leg, raise the arms up. Reach up, exhale, bend back into Warrior 2. Look over your right shoulder. The right hip crease is moving back, the hip into the midline. Inhale, lift up, straighten the front leg. Exhale, back into the pose. Twice more. Inhale, lift and reach. Exhale. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, hold for a couple of breaths. So really think about the back leg, the left leg. Push the outer edge of the left foot into the floor so you feel like the weight is evenly distributed between the legs and the body is central over the hips. Good. And then we start to straighten the right leg. Maybe just bring that left foot in a little bit. We're coming into triangle pose, Trikonasana. So the hips move to your left. You keep reaching that right arm to the right. Keep reaching. The right hip keeps moving back. And then release fingertips to the shin, or you can rest the hands on a block or on the floor and raise that left arm for triangle pose, Trikonasana. And once you're there, just check your alignment. That right hip is moving back. So if you push the ball of the right foot into the floor, that helps the head of the femur bone move back. Lengthen the lower ribs, the right side of the ribs. Open the chest. One more breath. And then inhale, lift up. Bend back into the right leg. Circle that top arm. And just take the block over to the other side. So we're in a lunge. Step back to plank. And then lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. And we step the left foot forward. Drop that back foot at 90 degrees, heel to arch alignment. Inhale, circle that top arm into Warrior 2, Virabhadrasana 2. Lunging deeply into that front leg, aiming to get the thigh parallel to the floor. Good, and then we inhale, straighten the front leg, reach the arms up. Exhale, lunge back into the pose. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, release. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, release and hold in Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2 for a couple of breaths. Feeling that left hip even, moving back into the midline. Outer edge of the right foot firmly pushing into the floor, so that back leg is really strong and you can lift your left toes up if you need to. Good, and then we start to straighten the left leg, preparing for Trikonasana. You can wiggle that back foot in a few inches to make the legs feel more stable. And then this time the hips move to your right and we keep reaching the left arm forward, keep reaching, lengthening the side of the body, and then release fingertips to the shin or to the floor or to your block and raise that right arm. So again, pushing the ball of the left foot into the floor so the head of the thigh bone, the femur bone can move back. We're lengthening the left side of the body and opening the right side. And again, thinking about that back leg. So although the sensation is in the front leg, the back leg needs to support you as well. And this is what happens when you're in splits as well. The sensation feels like it's in the front leg, but the back leg is working really hard as well. And then we lift up, lunge back into the left leg, circle that top arm, place the block to one side, step back to plank, push back to downward facing dog. Good. And then look forward, tiptoe the feet forward to the hands. Inhale onto the fingertips, half forward bend. And then inhale, floating the body up, reaching up. Exhale, hands to the heart center. Good. And again, inhaling, reaching up. Exhale, hinging forward, lengthening the spine. Release into forward bend. Notice if the legs feel like they're opening a little bit. Inhale onto the fingertips, half forward bend. Exhale, release the hands down. Step back to plank. Inhale, lift up the hips into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Good. And I'm going to, let's step the left foot forward first this time. And then start to turn to your right. Lunge into that right leg, but keep the hips quite high. Push the hip creases back. So we're getting a stretch in the inner thigh here. You can bring your hands to the heart center. You can keep the fingertips down for support. Or if you're wanting more core work, you can even extend the arms forward. We exhale over into the left leg. Keep pushing the hip creases back. Exhale over to the right. Exhale over to the left. Good, and then bring the fingertips down. Straighten the left leg. Feet are parallel. And you can keep the legs quite wide. If your hamstrings do feel a little more open, you can bring the feet a little bit closer together. And take the hands over to your left ankle. Keep moving that right hip crease back, but we're going to turn the body towards the left leg, and then maybe you start to fold the body over that left leg. And obviously, because you're upside down, or your vision's upside down, it's difficult to know what your hips are doing, but you probably need to move that right hip crease back, because it's probably come with you over to the left. Good, and then come back to centre, and over to the right. This time left hip moves back, we extend, lengthen the torso over the right leg. Good, and release. And then start to turn to the top of the mat, lunge into the left leg, step back to plank, push back into downward facing dog. Taking a breath. And this time step your right foot forward, start to turn to your left. Lunge into that left leg, but keeping the hips quite high. You can extend the arms forward or bring your hands to the heart center or fingertips to the floor. Over to the right. Over to the left. Last time over to the right. And then straighten the right leg, feet parallel. I'm going to turn around so I'm facing you. Okay, so if you want to, you can take your block and just press your hands into the block and work on lengthening the spine, pulling the kneecaps up to engage the quadriceps, and then this will help fire up the back of the legs. Or if you're feeling more open, you can start to lengthen the spine forward, keep lengthening, and then the hands might come down. The crown of the head might come down, but don't compromise the pose by trying to force the head down. The key is to get the hamstring lengthening. So if your hamstrings are quite tight, you probably need to stay up almost with the body parallel to the floor. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Doesn't mean you're not doing the pose properly, it just means you're still working on your flexibility. Good, and then wherever you are, lift up halfway and start to turn the foot to the top of the mat and step back to plank and just drop down onto your knees. Good, so we've just got 2 seated poses for more hamstring lengthening before we finish. So the first one is Hanumanasana, head to knee pose. So keep your left leg extended and take your right foot to your inner thigh. And once you get there, if your knee is floating up in the air, take your block and place it under the knee so you've got something to press the knee into. And also, if your hamstrings are still tight, take your belt, or it doesn't have to be a yoga belt, it can be a dressing gown belt, anything really. It's just so you can loop the belt around the bottom of the foot and then keep as much length as you need to. So as you tilt forward slightly, you can keep that length in the spine. So the key is we are aiming to get to fold the body over the leg, but we don't want to sort of hunch over and try and force ourselves into it. We want to get there with a nice long spine. So you need to keep moving the hip creases back, lengthening the spine. If you're using the belt, keep using the belt. And then you might just stay here working on that. If you are more open, you can then start to fold the body over the left leg. Keep the hip creases moving back. And all the time you think about, on the inhale, lengthening, and then on the exhale, releasing. Good, and then carefully lift up. So if we had longer, we could probably hold for longer. So if you're doing this at home, you can always pause and just carry on with that for a few more breaths. Then we extend the right leg, we're just changing sides, bend the left leg, bring the sole of the foot to the inner thigh. Again, if you need the block under the left knee, if you need the belt, loop the belt around the right sole of the right foot. So the key is to think about moving the hip creases back. So feel as if someone had a rope tied around you and they were gently pulling your hips back, but then your spine is lengthening. You're lengthening out of your low back. You're looking forward past your foot, and then maybe you start to fold over that right leg. Keep breathing, using your breath. Try not to tense up. It's easy to just hold the breath when it feels like the muscles aren't going to open with you. But if you try to breathe and use your pranayama, it should help you relax a little bit into the pose. And then inhale, lift up. Again, if you want to pause and carry on for a few more breaths. Finally, we're just coming into Hanumanasana. So we've got both legs forward. If that's really uncomfortable, you can always sit on your block to lift the hips up to make it a bit more comfortable. Again, you can use the belt looped around both feet this time, so flex the feet. The other option is to start with the legs bent, but with the spine as long as you can, and then you can bring the hands to the balls of the feet, keep the spine long, and then as you can work in increments, you can slide the heels forward, but keep the spine long. And then you might just stay there and working on that, and then eventually, you can straighten your legs all the way. Otherwise, just start with the legs straight. You might just want to have the body leaning forward a little bit. Otherwise, you can come into the full bend, forward fold, moving the hip creases back, lengthening the spine. Again, even here in this position, feel like you're engaging the muscles around the kneecaps, and this will make sure the legs are really active. Good, and then carefully lift up. Well done, and then just come to a comfortable cross-legged position. Doesn't have to be full lotus, obviously, just any any cross-legged position with a nice straight back. Take your hands to your heart center. Maybe close the eyes for a moment, take a deep inhale through the nose. Hold the breath at the top, so we inhale. Hold. Exhale through the mouth. Once more like that. Inhaling through the nose. Hold. Exhale through the mouth. Breathe normally. Bow your head towards your fingertips. Namaste. Well done, yogis. That was part 1 of your journey to Hanumanasana. I'll see you for part 2. Thank you.